As soon as I crossed the threshold of my grandmother's old house, a strange sensation washed over me. The walls, covered in faded and torn wallpaper, seemed to have absorbed decades of stories and secret. The air was heavy with the smell of dust and mold, and an unexpected chill ran down my spine, as if someone were watching me. "It's just your imagination," I murmured to myself, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling. But as I walked down the dark corridor, the afternoon light faded, and the house seemed to come alive. "Hi, Grandma," I whispered, even though I knew she was no longer here. The longing tightened my heart. That house had been her home for so many years, and now it was my turn to inhabit it. Creaky wooden floorboards beneath my feet echoed with each step I took, as if the house were complaining about my presence. What did I expect to find here? A legacy? Answers? Perhaps just more questions. As I settled in, the silence was broken by a distant whisper, almost inaudible. "Is anyone here?" I called out, but only the echo of my own voice responded. I tried to ignore it, focusing on unpacking my belongings. Curiosity consumed me. What could be hidden within those walls? I approached a dusty window and looked outside, where the branches of the trees swayed in the wind, their shadows dancing on the ground. As night fell, the house took on an even darker aspect. Shadows lengthened, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. A series of whispers began to float through the corridor, as if the walls were sharing ancient secret. "This isn't real," I thought, trying to convince myself. Curiosity was stronger than fear. With my heart pounding, I decided to investigate. "Someone is here. Show yourself," I yelled, my voice echoing through the house. The silence that followed was deafening. The only response was the sound of my own quickening heartbeat. As I walked down the corridor, I noticed a door ajar to the right. The brass handle was polished, and I hesitated for a moment. Curiosity pulled me in. I pushed the door open with a hesitant motion and stepped inside. The room was covered in dust, and objects from the past were scattered everywhere. It was then that something caught my attention. An old black and white photograph, simply framed, hanging on the wall. As I approached, I realized it was a picture of my grandmother, surrounded by a group of women in old-fashioned clothing. Their faces were serious, and their gazes seemed to pierce my soul, as if they knew something I didn't. "Who are they?" I murmured to myself, my hands trembling as I touched the dusty frame. An intense cold coursed through my body, and a wave of unknown emotions hit me. "Grandma, what didn't you tell me?" I asked aloud, as if expecting the answer to come from somewhere. But the only response was the echo of my own fear reverberating off the walls. I felt I was on the brink of discovering something that could change everything. The house, with all its secrets, seemed to be waiting for me. The whispering resumed, stronger now, and I couldn't resist. "I can't stay here without knowing," I told myself, determined. The desire to understand the truth about my family and the history surrounding me propelled me forward, even in the face of the fear that settled in. The night promised revelations, and I was resolved to face them. The light in the attic was dim, filtered through a dusty window that barely let the sun's rays through. The smell of mold and old wood filled my nose, and I hesitated to climb the spiral staircase leading to the upper floor. But curiosity outweighed fear. The dusty journal I had found promised a connection to my family's past, and I needed to know more. When I finally reached the attic, my heart raced. The space was a labyrinth of boxes and furniture draped in white sheets like sleeping ghosts. I looked around, trying to familiarize myself with the area. It was then that I noticed a dark wooden box almost hidden beneath an old trunk. My instincts told me to open it. With some effort, I managed to pull it out. Inside the box lay a diary, its pages yellowed and worn by time. I felt a chill run down my spine as I touched it. The texture was rough and cold. I delicately opened it, as if unveiling a sacred secret. The words, though faded, revealed a story I could never have imagined. Agnes, witchcraft, curse. I murmured to myself as the letters danced before my eyes. Each line was like a revelation, and I couldn't stop reading. The ancestor who connected me to all of this, Agnes, had been accused of witchcraft during the infamous trials. The diary spoke of the horrors that her family faced, a cycle of suffering that seemed endless. This can't be true, I thought, my heart racing. What else did I not know about my own family? Did you find something interesting? Alex's voice echoed behind me, startling me. He had come up to me, curious and determined. Yes, a diary from my grandmother. It talks about Agnes, an ancestor accused of witchcraft. It seems our family carries a curse. I stared at him, searching for some answer in his gaze. He stepped closer, reading the pages I had opened. This is fascinating, but also terrifying. Are you sure you want to delve into this? The stories from Salem aren't just legends. Many people suffered. I can't ignore this, Alec. If there's something I can do to break this curse, I need to know. The urge to uncover the truth was stronger than my fear. As we continued to read, a shadow moved quickly behind me, making my heart race. I looked back, but all I saw was a dark corner of the attic. What was that? I asked, my voice trembling. Probably just the wind, Alex said. But the hesitation in his voice did little to reassure me. The atmosphere in the attic seemed to have changed, as if the house itself were breathing heavier. I don't know. I feel like I'm not alone here. My skin prickled at the thought that the strange presence I felt might be real. Let's get out of here. We can investigate later. I took my hand, but before we could descend, the box I found in the attic began to vibrate lightly. Startled, I looked at Alex, who also appeared perplexed. Are you feeling this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Yeah, it must be some kind of energy. He looked into my eyes, and I could see the determination reflected in them. We need to find out what's going on. Then let's do it together. The connection between us strengthened at that moment. I realized that Alex was not just a historian. He had become my ally in this search for answers. Determined, I closed the diary and looked out the attic window. The sun was setting, casting long and threatening shadows on the floor. The feeling that something was about to happen enveloped me, and I knew there was no turning back. The truth about my family and the curse that haunted us was closer than ever. The library was enveloped in deep silence, broken only by the sound of pages turning and the subtle creaking of old shelves. I approached Alex, who was engrossed in a thick book about the history of Salem. The soft light filtering through the windows created an almost ethereal atmosphere, and I couldn't help but notice how completely absorbed he seemed in the content. Did you find something interesting? I asked, trying to hide the anxiety that pulsed within me. Yes, some references to the witch trials and the rituals that were performed to protect families. It's a fascinating story, but also tragic, he replied, lifting his eyes to meet mine. There was an intensity in his gaze that made me feel as if he could see beyond the words, as if he could perceive what I truly carried within me. I need to know more about my family, Alex. There's something in my grandmother's house that calls me, and the whispers, they won't stop, confessed, urgency palpable in my voice. He closed the book and looked at me with a serious expression. We can investigate together. I have some notes on artifacts that might be related to these stories. One of them is a talisman that, according to legends, may have the power to break curses. Really? Where can we find it? I asked, hope beginning to ignite within me. There are rumors that it was hidden somewhere in the city, perhaps even in one of the old houses. We need to do more research, but I'm sure we can uncover more, Alex replied, his enthusiasm contagious. After several hours of research, we decided to return to my grandmother's house. The air was heavy with expectation and tension, and I felt that each step we took toward that old house was a step closer to uncovering the secret held. On arriving, the sun was already setting, casting long, distorted shadows across the floor. Let's go to the attic, I suggested, determination growing within me. If there's any clue about this talisman, that's where we need to look. We climbed the creaking stairs, and as we reached the attic, the atmosphere changed. The air was thick, and a sense of discomfort washed over me. The dim light from the lamp flickered, creating shadows that seemed to dance on the walls. Do you feel this? Alex asked, his eyes scanning the space as if he were searching for something. Yes, it's as if we are being watched, I replied, wrapping my arms around my body, trying to fend off the chill that enveloped me. I walked toward a wall that seemed different, the boards a little more worn. I began to tap lightly with my knuckles, and a hollow thud echoed in the room. Alex, come here. I think I found something. He approached, and together we began to press on the boards. The wall moved, revealing a small wooden box covered in strange symbols. My heart raced at the sight of the box, and a sense of recognition washed over me. This could be the talisman we were looking for, Alex said, his eyes shining with excitement. Should we open it? I asked, hesitant, but the curiosity was stronger. Alex nodded, and together we lifted the lid of the box. As we opened it, a wave of energy swept through the room. A soft light emanated from within, and we both stepped back a little. Surprised. What is this? Alex murmured, his eyes wide with astonishment. I don't know, but it seems. My voice faltered as the light began to intensify, enveloping us in a sphere of warmth and light. Alex, what's happening? He held my hand, and in that moment, I felt we were connected in a way that went beyond friendship. I don't know, but we need to understand this. Let's investigate more about these symbols, said, the determination in his voice giving me courage. Yes, we need to find out what this means. We can't leave this unanswered, I replied, feeling we were on the brink of something much larger than we had anticipated, as if the past was about to reveal itself in a way that would change everything. When I opened the box, a surge of energy coursed through my body, as if 1,000 volts of electricity were zapping through me. I hesitated, my heart racing, as the wooden lid slowly pulled away, revealing a content cloaked in dust and mystery. Inside, I found a blue crystal amulet, perfectly carved in the shape of a droplet. As I held it, a warmth spread through my hands, as if the object were alive. Did you feel that? I asked, looking at Alex, who was as attentive as I was. Yes, it's like the air around us has changed, he replied, his eyes fixed on the amulet. I think this artifact has more power than we imagined. The tension in the room intensified. As our gazes met, something inexplicable connected us. It was as if an invisible current bound us together, and I felt we were about to uncover something much greater than just a family curse. I could see the curiosity and determination reflected in Alex's eyes, and that encouraged me. We need to understand what this means, I said, holding the amulet firmly. Let's try to learn more about Agnes and the rituals she mentioned in the diary. Nodding, he moved closer, and we began to examine the symbols carved on the box. These drawings, they look familiar. I've seen something similar in books about the witches of Salem, Alex commented, as his fingers danced over the intricate lines. You really believe we can break the curse? I asked, doubt weighing in my voice. What if this leads us to something even more dangerous? Sometimes you have to take risks to find the truth, he replied, with a confidence I wished I had. Maybe what we need to do is confront what's buried. The story isn't just about what happened, but also about how it affects. I agreed, but a shadow of fear settled in my heart. I was about to ask more when, suddenly, a cold presence enveloped the room. A shiver ran down my spine, and in an instant, the shadows around us began to stir. Did you feel that? Alex whispered, his eyes wide. Yes, it's as if something is here, watching, I said, my voice almost failing. A whisper echoed through the attic, resonating in my ears, murmuring my name in a way that made me shudder. What was that? Before Alex could respond, a vision flooded my mind. I saw women in old-fashioned attire, gathered in a circle, with expressions of despair and determination. Among them, I recognized the figure of Agnes, her piercing eyes fixed on me. You must confront what is buried in your past, she said, her voice echoing like a lament. The curse you carry is not just a shadow, but an echo of what your family suffered. Agnes, I shouted, but she vanished before I could reach her. The attic was silent again, except for the sound of my accelerated breathing. Did you see that too? Alex asked, concern clear in his voice. Yes, she was there, I said, trying to process everything. She wants me to confront the past. But how? Maybe the amulet is the key, Alex suggested, looking at me with intensity. We can use it to connect with what happened. We need to know what Agnes and the other women faced. I felt my stomach churn. I was about to dive into something that could change everything. What if we can't handle what we find? I asked, the uncertainty weighing on me. Then we'll face it together, Alex replied, a firmness in his voice that gave me some comfort. We're not alone in this. I took a deep breath, determined to move forward. All right, let's discover everything we can. I can't let fear control my life. And so, with the amulet in hand and growing determination, we prepared to uncover the secrets that haunted my family and, who knows, maybe break the chains that bound us to the past. The tension in the air was almost palpable. As the sun set, plunging the house into a growing twilight, I decided it was time to act. Curse weighing on my family could no longer be ignored. I looked at Alex, who was by my side, his eyes full of determination, but also a glimpse of concern. What we were about to do was serious, and the consequences could be irreversible. "You really think we should do this?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What if the curse is more powerful than we imagined?" "We need to face it head-on, Clara," Alex replied, his voice steady. "If the curse exists, it's our duty to confront it. We can't keep living in fear. Besides, we have a chance to free your family." I took a deep breath, trying to control the anxiety that consumed me. The idea of performing a ritual seemed both fascinating and terrifying. What if something goes wrong? What if the ritual awakens forces we can't control? He hesitated for a moment, his eyes locked on mine. "Then we'll face it together. I'm not here just out of historical curiosity. I'm here for you and for your family. We can't let the past continue to haunt us." His words brought me some comfort, but the apprehension still hung over me like a dark cloud. We decided that the best place to perform the ritual would be in the attic, where I had found the diary and the artifact. It was there that the connection to the past was strongest, and where the energy of ancient practices could still be felt. "We'll need some items," Alex said, starting to organize everything we had gathered so far. "Salt, candles, and maybe some herbs for purification. We need to create a safe space." "All right, I'll get that," I replied, heading to the kitchen. The ritual would require all our attention, and I didn't want to leave anything to chance. I filled my hands with salt, grabbed some candles, and searched for dried herbs that my grandmother used in her recipe. The atmosphere was heavy, and each step I took seemed to echo in an unsettling silence. When I returned to the attic, Alex had already begun to trace a circle with the salt on the floor. The candles were arranged around it, their flames flickering. "Perfect," he murmured, looking at the circle. "Now we need to focus and connect with the ancestral energy." I sat down in front of him, and together we began to recite the words from the diary. Each syllable seemed to vibrate in the air around us, and as we spoke, the temperature in the room began to drop. A strange sensation of electricity coursed through my arms and legs, and the fear that had once paralyzed me began to transform into a fervent determination. "Clara, are you ready?" Alex asked, his voice sounding almost distant. "I am," I replied, although the uncertainty was still there like a lurking shadow. "Let's do this." As we continued to recite the words, presence began to manifest. The air around us seemed to weave into something denser, and a cold breeze blew, extinguishing some of the candles. Alex looked at me, his face pale in the flickering light. "What's happening?" "I don't know," I murmured, my heart racing. The whisper I used to hear on lonely nights now seemed to echo around us, more real than ever. A soft, almost familiar voice began to intertwine with our chants. "Free me," voice whispered, and an ethereal figure began to form in the center of the salt circle. It was a woman, with an intense and deep gaze, as if she knew all the secrets the house held. "You don't know what you're doing." "Who are you?" I asked, a voice faltering. Alex was beside me, utterly mesmerized by the vision. "I am Agnes," the figure replied, grave tone filling the attic. "The curse you seek to break is not what it seems. It protects what remains of your lineage." Her words hit me like a blow. "Tex? How so?" "If you break the curse, you will lose more than you can imagine," Agnes warned, features contorting in pain. "The true essence of the curse is fear. To overcome it, you must face your own truths." The fear began to mix with a sense of urgency. I didn't know whether to continue the ritual or give up. What would happen if I broke the curse? What would I really be sacrificing? "Clara, we need to decide now," Alex said, his voice an anchor amidst the storm of emotions. "What do you want?" I don't know," I replied, the despair growing inside me. "But I can't let this go on. I can't let my family live with this fear forever." The shadows around us began to stir, and Agnes's figure vanished in a whirlwind of wind. The ritual was far from over, and the dark forces were preparing for a confrontation that I wasn't sure I could endure. Night of the ritual approached, and as the clock ticked away the hours, my heart raced. I felt torn between the need to break the curse that haunted my family and the growing fear that settled in my chest. The walls of the house seemed to pulse, as if they were alive and aware of what was to come. "Alex, do you think we're ready for this?" I asked, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. He looked at me, his deep eyes reflecting the light of the single candle flickering on the table. "We have to try. We can't let this continue. The curse isn't just a story. It's real and needs to be faced." His determination was palpable, but it couldn't shake the feeling that we were stepping into something much larger than ourselves. As we prepared everything, the air around us began to thicken, as if the atmosphere was charged with electrical energy. I didn't know if it was fear or a supernatural force, but something was changing. "Do you feel that?" I asked, looking at Alex with concern. "Yes," he replied, running his hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I knew well. "But it's normal. Or at least, I hope it is." He tried to smile, but I couldn't return it. The tension was palpable, and the expectation of the unknown wrapped around us like a heavy blanket. We began to trace the ritual circle with salt. Each grain felt like it weighed tons. "This is to protect us," Alex said, and his voice sounded more like a statement than an explanation. "If anything tries to stop us, this circle will keep the evil forces at bay." But at the same time, what kept us safe also isolated us from the outside world. When we finally positioned ourselves in the center of the circle, a wave of cold swept through my body. I looked at the candles, whose flames flickered as if trying to adapt to the tense atmosphere of the room. "Let's do this," I murmured, trying to gather courage. Alex nodded, and with a decisive movement, he began to recite the words we found in my grandmother's diary. As his voice echoed in the room, the environment transformed. Cold wind blew, making the candles sway and the light dance. A shiver ran down my spine, and in an instant, everything became oppressive. "I feel like we're being watched," Alex said, his expression turning serious. "We need to continue." "Just don't stop," I urged him, feeling an invisible force pressing against us. But as he recited, a shadow seemed to grow at the edges of the circle, its forms twisting in a threatening manner. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to concentrate, but fear began to flood my mind like a wave of despair. Suddenly, a spectral figure appeared before us, emerging from the shadows. The air grew colder, and a chilling whisper crossed the space. "You shouldn't be here." The entity spoke, its voice echoing like a distant echo. I opened my eyes, and the sight before me made my heart stop. It was a woman, with features I recognized immediately. Agnes, my ancestor. Her gaze was piercing, and a deep sadness emanated from her. "Agnes," my voice trembled, and I felt small under her gaze. "What are you doing here?" "I came to warn you," she said, her voice a mixture of despair and authority. "What you plan to do. The consequences could be terrible." "But we have to break the curse," I replied, frustration boiling inside me. "I can't live like this, with this weight on my family." "Understand, the curse is not just a burden, it is a protection," Agnes insisted, presence vibrating around us. "You break it, something far worse may arise." I felt my stomach twist, the revelation hitting me like a blow. What I was about to do could not only affect my life, but also the fate of everyone who came before me. The shadows danced around us, and fear mixed with determination. "Alex," I whispered, searching for his gaze. "What do we do now?" He looked as lost as I felt. "We need to decide if we're willing to risk everything." The weight of the words hung in the air, and as Agnes's figure became more nebulous, I realized that the true battle was just beginning. Agnes's presence before me was both terrifying and fascinating. I could see her ethereal face, shaped by the pain and wisdom of centuries. Her penetrating gaze seemed to scan my soul, and as her words echoed in my mind, terrifying truth began to reveal itself. "You don't understand, my descendant," Agnes murmured, her voice as soft as the wind rustling through the trees. "The curse you fear so much is not just a curse. It's a protection." "Protection?" I asked, confusion mingling with anxiety. "How can it be protection if it's destroying us?" She stepped forward, and an intense cold enveloped me, as if her very essence was submerging all my fears. During the trials, many innocents were condemned. Curse was cast to protect those who remained. If you break it, something much worse may come to light. The shadows around us began to stir, whispering and writhing like restless serpents. I could feel the tension in the air, an impending wave of despair threatening to consume us. "What is this, something worse?" I inquired, trying to keep my voice steady. "The unjustly killed still roam here, seeking vengeance," Agnes replied, a glimmer of sadness in her eyes. "If the curse is undone, they will rise again, and it will be chaos without end." Fear grew in my chest, and I looked at Alex, who stood beside me, equally perplexed. He held my hand, the softness of his touch giving me a bit of courage. "We can't let this happen," he said, determination clear in his voice. "We need to find another way." But before I could respond, Agnes's figure began to distort. The shadows that had seemed distant now clustered around us, forming a threatening circle. The faces that emerged were familiar, but filled with a sadness and anger that left me paralyzed. "You cannot escape your legacy, my dear." Agnes's voice resonated, now more distant, as if being pulled away. "The fate of your family rests in your hands." "I don't want this," I exclaimed, desperate. "I don't want to be responsible for more pain." "You have no choice," one of the shadows whispered, voice cold and deep. "You must decide between sacrificing your family or sacrificing yourself." Anguish consumed me. What could I do? The idea of sacrificing any of my loved ones was unbearable. Sacrificing myself? What would that mean? What was I really willing to lose? Alex squeezed my hand tighter, as if he could transmit a bit of his courage to me. "We can't let them manipulate us," he whispered, his voice firm. "We need to fight, no matter what that means." The shadows began to close in, their eyes burning with an insatiable hunger. Air was heavy, and the feeling of despair became almost palpable. "You are so close to making the wrong choice," threatening voice echoed, and I felt fear spreading like fire. "No," I screamed, trying to gather the strength I had left. "I won't let you decide my fate." The light from the artifact's box began to shine more brightly, as if responding to my despair. Agnes, now almost invisible, seemed to hesitate for a moment. "Remember, true freedom comes from within. Fear is the only curse that needs to be broken." With those words reverberating in my mind, a wave of determination began to rise. I didn't know how, but I was resolved to find a way to face not only the shadows, but also the fears that imprisoned me. I looked at Alex, and he met my gaze, confidence in his eyes reflecting the new hope beginning to bloom within me. The battle was far from over, but one thing was clear: I was not alone. Together, we would face whatever lurked in the shadows of our history. The intense light enveloped us in a way I had never experienced. I closed my eyes, feeling a whirlwind of emotions as the energy pulsed around us. When I opened my eyes again, the environment had completely changed. I was standing in a square, surrounded by wooden houses and people dressed in typical 17th century attire. The smell of smoke from bonfires and the distant murmur of conversations filled the air. "Alex," I called out, but my voice sounded muffled, as if it were lost in the mist of time. I looked around until I spotted Alex, standing next to me, with an expression of shock mirroring my own. He looked at me, his eyes shining with a mix of fear and curiosity. "Are we in the past?" he asked, his voice trembling. "It seems so." "But where exactly are we?" I replied, trying to remember the history lessons I had in school. What I saw around me was a scene that could have been taken from a book about the witch trials of Salem. "Look!" Alex pointed to the center of the square. Crowd was gathering, and in the middle of it was a bonfire. My heart raced in my chest as I realized they were about to carry out an execution. "No, can't be," I murmured, and a chill ran down my spine. This is a trial." He nodded, his eyes widening as he saw a woman being dragged toward the bonfire. Despair took hold of me. It was as if I were watching a horrific scene that I couldn't change. "We can't stay here. We need to go back," I said, feeling the urge to do something, but not knowing what. Fear consumed me, and I wondered if it was my ancestor, Agnes, being led to her death. "We need to understand what's happening," Alex insisted, gripping my arm. "Maybe we can learn something that will help us break the curse." The scene before us unfolded like a nightmare. The women around the bonfire screamed words of hatred and accusation, and I could feel the negative energy pulsing toward us. The look on the face of the accused woman was a mix of terror and resignation. "She's a witch," a woman shouted, and the echo of her words reverberated like thunder. "She must be punished." "We have to do something," pleaded, but Alex pulled me back. "We can't interfere. We're just watching," he said, voice tense. "You need to learn." As the crowd gathered, a man stepped forward, raising his arms to silence the mob. His gaze was severe, and he seemed to hold authority over the situation. "We are here to deliver justice," he proclaimed. "These treacherous witches must be eliminated so we can protect our town and our faith." His words echoed in my mind like an echo from the past, still resonating in the present. I realized that injustice was rampant, and the woman in the bonfire was merely a victim of collective fear. Despair overwhelmed me, and I wondered how many lives had been destroyed by that same ignorance. "Can't let this happen," I whispered, but Alex held me tighter, his eyes filled with determination. "We need to focus, understand what this has to do with the curse," he said, his voice soft yet firm. "If we don't confront this, we are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past." The atmosphere grew heavier as the execution approached. I looked at the woman in the bonfire, and something inside me shattered. I didn't know that woman, but I felt a deep connection to her. It was as if her suffering was mine, as if her burden had accumulated on the shoulders of my lineage. "I feel your pain," I whispered, and tears began to slide down my face. "I'm sorry." Then, a wave of energy swept through the space. The sky darkened, and a storm formed, as if the universe itself were reacting to the injustice about to unfold. "Look!" Alex shouted, and I turned my gaze back to the bonfire, where the flames began to twist in a strange manner. It was as if the negative energy were being absorbed, and a whispering voice began to echo around us. "Revenge? Justice? Freedom?" The sensation of being in two worlds at once left me confused. I was living a moment that I couldn't change, but that was somehow shaping my destiny. And at the same time, a part of me was desperately trying to understand how all of this related to the curse that haunted my family. "We need to get out of here," Alex said. But before we could do anything, a blinding light enveloped us again, and everything around us began to spin. Desperate? I grabbed Alex's hand, and together we were pulled away from that horrific scene, leaving behind the echoes of history that seemed to want to imprison us. The shadows danced around me, an oppressive presence wrapping me in a cloak of fear and despair. Air was thick with tension, and I felt each beat of my heart resonate like a drum in a macabre ritual. I looked at Alex, who was by my side, his eyes wide with a mix of dread and determination. He held my hand tightly, as if he wanted to anchor me in that moment. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper but heavy with concern. "I don't know if I'm ready to face the shadows," a voice trembling. "But I know I can't go on like this. I can't live with this fear." Then the voices began to echo again, louder and more insistent. "The true essence of the curse is fear." The shadows stirred as if feeding off our anxieties. "Free yourself from what binds you." "Did you hear that?" I asked, looking at Alex. He nodded, his expression of confusion transforming into understanding. "That's it. Fear is what keeps us trapped. If you face it, maybe we can break the curse," he said, determination starting to shine in his eyes. I took a deep breath, trying to summon the courage that felt so distant. What do I have to lose? I've been trapped in this for so long. I looked at the shadows, which now seemed to move more slowly, as if they were eagerly waiting for my decision. I will face my fear. With a step forward, I felt a penetrating chill enveloping my body. The shadows drew closer, forming a dense circle around me. "What do you fear, daughter of the cursed lineage?" The voice echoed, deep and menacing. I fear what I might discover about myself," I confessed, my voice almost faltering. "What I might find in my past, in my family's choices. I'm afraid that this will change me forever." The shadows fell silent for a moment, as if contemplating my words. "Face the truth. Accept your legacy. Only way to free yourself is through acceptance," they whispered in unison. "But what if the truth is unbearable?" I questioned, doubt invading my mind. "What if I discover that I am just like them?" "You are not like them. You are stronger," Alex replied, his gaze fixed on me. "Your strength comes from acknowledging your history, not from fleeing it. You can change what is destined to happen." Determination grew within me, and I knew I had to be brave. I accept my legacy. I accept what my family went through. I won't let fear control me. As the words left my lips, a wave of energy surged through my body. The shadows began to stir, as if losing their power. "That's it!" "Keep going," they shouted, their voices now weaker. "I am more than the curse," I yelled, feeling the force surrounding me dissipate. "I am the hope for a different future." With every word, the shadows began to fade, and I realized that the chill enveloping me was transforming into a warm light. The figures started to contort, losing their shape. "Fear is your greatest enemy. But you are now free. Keep going, daughter of Agnes. Fight against what confines you." I felt a lightness taking over me, as if the chains binding me were breaking. The shadows, which once seemed so powerful and threatening, were now dissolving into an ethereal mist. "You're doing it!" Alex exclaimed beside me, the joy in his voice bringing new energy to my heart. "Yes, I am. I am free," I shouted, raising my arms, feeling the light now enveloping me completely. And as the shadows dissipated, I realized I would never let fear govern my life again. The past might have its claws in me, but I finally had the courage to face it. The intensity of the darkness around me was almost palpable, as if the shadows had become an extension of my own fear. The malevolent spirit before me, a spectral figure with familiar features that I somehow could not identify, emanated an unsettling power. He slowly approached, his cold presence enveloping me. "You don't have to do this, dear," he said, his voice a whisper cutting through the silence like a sharp blade. "Join me. Together, we can break this curse and take control of our destiny." "Who are you?" I asked, my heart racing uncontrollably. "Why are you doing this?" He hesitated, and a shadow of sadness crossed his face. "I am one of your ancestors, someone who has been trapped between this world and the next. The curse keeps me here, but together we could free both you and me. I can give you the power to shape your family's future." The temptation was strong. Power, knowledge, everything I had ever wanted. But the memory of my grandmother and all the women who suffered because of this curse held me back. "You want me to join you? What? To perpetuate this pain? That's not freedom, it's a different prison." "You don't understand," he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls of the old house. "The curse is a protection, but also a chain. If you don't join me, we will all be condemned to live in this torment forever. You have the opportunity to change it all." I felt the pressure rising, as if the shadows around us were closing in tighter. "You're offering me a choice, but what if I don't want it? What if I decide to fight this on my own?" "What do you think you're doing?" retorted, anger evident in his ethereal expression. "You're just delaying the inevitable. Truth is, you are part of this. The curse runs in your veins." A wave of despair hit me, and I remembered Alex, his constant presence and support. He was by my side, even now, amidst this confusion. "Alex," I called, the words spilling from me like a cry for help. "I'm here, Clara," he replied, his voice a beacon in the storm. He stepped closer, his gaze firm and determined. "Don't let him deceive you. You have the strength you need to face him." "But what if he's right?" I asked, doubt creeping into my mind. "What if this curse is really a protection? What if I don't know what I'm about to unleash?" "You need to believe in yourself," Alex insisted, stepping forward. "What do you have to lose, besides what you've already lost? Whatever the spirit is promising, it's an illusion. True strength comes from you, not from alliances with shadows." I looked at the spirit of my family, and for the first time, I saw the pain in his eyes. "Do you really believe that if I join you, all of this would end?" "Yes," he answered, the hope in his voice almost convincing. "We will be free," but deep down I knew that this freedom came at a cost. Freedom? Or a new prison? I turned to Alex, seeking comfort and clarity. "I can't join him, Alex. I can't repeat the mistakes of the past." The spirit let out a low growl, and the shadows around us began to stir, as if sensing that a confrontation was about to happen. "You're making a terrible mistake," he shouted, frustration evident in his voice. "You don't know what you're doing." But determination grew within me. "I know what I want," I declared, feeling the energy pulse within my body. "I want to break this curse, but not by sacrificing my life or joining you. I will free myself from fear." With a swift motion, I raised my hand, and the light from the artifact box began to shine again, intensifying as I focused. "I accept my legacy. I accept my story, but not yours." The shadows began to disperse, as if responding to my call. Malevolent spirit screamed in rage, but his form began to unravel before me. "You can't do this. You can't leave me." "I can and I will," I said, the energy growing around me, illuminating the darkness. This curse does not control me anymore. And so, with one last cry of liberation, the light expanded, illuminating the space and sweeping the shadows away. In the warmth of the light, I realized that Alex was by my side, holding my hand, and together we faced what had once imprisoned us. The true battle had been won, but the echo of our struggle still resonated in every corner of the house. The future of my family was in my hands, and I was ready to face it.